So my understanding is now you're ready to hear from me. I want to thank Dr. Mai-Do, and I know I said that wrong, and also Simon, who set up our tech today, and also my dear friend Beata. I received some questions. What I thought we would do is give you some overview that may be encouraging, and then I've received some questions that I hope will be relevant to you, and then towards the end we can take questions in a relaxed way, and I'll take about 5 minutes on each one. I think the first thing I want to confirm is, Simon, am I coming across well? Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Wave your hands if you can hear me.
Yeah, we are all right.
Okay, very good. Thank you. This is really a problem that we have in the treatment of tick infections, is everybody's telling us what to do. They're telling us how to think, and they're not allowing freedom for this stuff to get better. For example, I've already told Simon to an I and spell it correctly. And I think one of the problems, just give you a little overview of how I got into this. What my goal is today. Years ago, John Paul II started undermining communism in Poland. And what I would like to do is start undermining the plague of tick infections in Poland. My friends and relatives who became very sick with these infections. We spent $200,000 in US dollars to send them to the best people we could find, and we were very thankful for them, and they got modestly better. Because they didn't get fully better, most of them go into full-time research. So I have been hiding and reading for approximately over 10 years full-time. And what we've done in our research is try to find new solutions and new information that would help challenging people that are struggling with these infections. There's one thing I hate more than anything in the world, and that's suffering. So I understand that a number of you have suffered in various ways, and I think that what I'd like to do is give some encouragement to what I see coming and what we already know that may help you. The first thing is, I want to tell you how freeing it is to start in Poland. In America, you have to wear a suit, like I'm holding here, like the doctor had, and you have to wear these nice suit pants. But in Poland, I don't have to do that, because Beata told me the Polish are more relaxed. When I asked her about a tie, and thought I needed to wear a tie, she goes, no, in Poland the doctors are very relaxed. You don't even need to wear a tie. Well, the first thing I see is Simon and the good doctor wearing a coat. And I asked them both to remove their tie. But I have found in the last couple of years a tremendous freedom and warmth and love between myself and many Polish patients and friends. And I hope that's the spirit you'll take what I want to share today in. That I'm sharing these things out of affection and respect for my friends there already, and new friends that I hope to meet. I would like to add, if you do have a question or want to follow up with me, on the screen is my website, which allows for a free conversation with me for roughly about, and I'm very happy to call you in Poland at your house. And that website is on the screen, but it's personalconsult.com. If you have trouble getting it, just call Beata at 3 in the morning. The other thing is, on that site there are a number of free books, and these are checklists that are not known throughout Europe. They're not really known throughout America. And they look at they give you, and your doctor, progressive and open-minded, some of the symptoms of Babesia, Bartonella, and Lyme. There's other free books there that we'll talk about perhaps later. I think the first thing that I would like to mention is that what's going on? What are some basic things what's going on that this isn't cured as quickly and as easily as AIDS or many other types of very severe illnesses? I think the first thing is Babesia and Bartonella have been around forever, and the notion of Lyme disease alone is a huge error. I don't believe there is any such thing as Lyme alone. There may be some rare cases, but if the labs show only Lyme in most people in a family with Lyme, I think it's because the labs aren't good enough. Bartonella is carried by more carriers than any infection in the world. After flus and colds, and after malaria, which infects half the world, about half the world can be exposed to, I think Bartonella is close behind that. It's probably in almost every cat in Europe, and it's in probably many of the dogs. I don't know the percentage. The other thing is Babesia has been around a very long time. Some people feel that the death of the cattle in the Bible story of the plagues was Babesia. I don't know. I wasn't there. I'm old, but I'm not that old. We can ask Dr. Maideo later what he saw when he watched the plagues, and ask him. By the way, I just want to get a little drink of water. I'm part German, but I want you to understand this is not beer, and it's not vodka. So if you read on the chat rooms or the internet that during the talk I was drinking vodka, you can tell them no, it was water. Boy, that's the best Russian vodka water I've ever had. So the first mistake is this idea that there's only the Lyme alone. That's really unfortunate. Babesia 100 years ago killed all cattle in the southern part, and it's the most headaches and weight loss and weight gain. Bartonella and anxiety and depression, and can hurt every organ, like your hand or your heart. I'm not pointing to my knee, I know where my heart is, okay? And your liver and your spleen. It can hurt every organ in the body 20 ways. In America, I also do signing, so it can hurt every organ 20 ways. And as an American now, I think I can sign, and I can also speak Polish because I know how to say Dr. Majdeo's name, Simon and Beata. I know 3 Polish words. The other thing I think it's very important is everybody needs a tailored approach. There is no person in that room that I see, and you all look wonderful and marvelous, by the way, that is wearing the same clothing. I see brown, I see black, I see a hat, I see no hat, and that is 1,000 times more serious. Lyme, Babesia, and Bartonella is the treatment has to be completely tailored. So, for example, why is this important? Well, the reason it's so important, and I'm going to mention it's still here, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and people get, but before we had any antibiotics, if you lived in one town, 20% would live, and if you lived in a neighboring town, 80% would live. The reason for that is the difference in strain. So even in Poland, there isn't a Polish Lyme and a Polish Bartonella and a Polish Babesia. There's strains and subtypes even within a species. And some of these I put on my Facebook, James Schaller, or the other Facebook, James Schaller, MD. And why don't you friend me? And we do post different new insights there. Many world leaders look at those Facebook posts every day to help them make the decisions for their large countries. You'll have to forgive me, I'm part Irish. So we at funerals help myself. So what is the best in testing? Let me give you an idea of what I'm talking about. One way to approach it is that somebody gets some herbs or some synthetic antibiotics or malaria medications and use just one in a class. You don't use one antibiotic or one anti-malarial, because what we know for certain is that not everybody to those. So for example, in many places in the world, and based on our infection society here in America, there's the belief that one antibiotic can be given for 2 to 4 weeks at a very set dose, and will have complete death, a very form of Lyme. Well, I don't dislike those people, I don't hate those people, but as a doctor and a scientist, I'm going to strongly disagree with them. What we have found with the top three, which means Babesia, Bartonella, and Lyme, is that no one person gets treated the same. Now, if you're not familiar with these two infections, I just want to mention a little bit more about them. Babesia is a single-celled parasite. It looks like immature Lyme, and it is harder to kill, it looks like immature malaria, and it lives inside of the red blood cells. So when you kill it, sometimes you can feel quite terrible, and you can feel your symptoms get worse and have a mood change or trouble sleeping or want to sleep all the time. Bartonella is a bacteria, it's very tiny, that floats in the blood, and what's amazing about it is you don't die in 2 days. Most bacteria, if they're in your blood, dead in 2 days if that's not fixed. But actually, one way to detect Bartonella is to look for labs that are immune labs, and you'll see a suppression of some immune fighting chemicals, and some people have a lower temperature in their body, so the normal Celsius temperature is down a little bit because of the Bartonella. Treatment, then, I want to talk about in terms of some basic options. The first thing is, there are people who mean very well and are great healers, but they know a certain way to heal. So I've treated certain acupuncture doctors, a needle into the different areas, and we think that can help some, but that's the only thing they use. We may inherit somebody from Germany where there's a lot of homeopathy, and there may be a feeling that it helped their sister, but it didn't help them. But all that person uses to treat is homeopathy. Others only use herbs. Others only try to make the immune system come up or remove heavy metals. Others may use only synthetic medications. I think what I'd like to suggest is one type of treatment is not the best way to look at this. I think the best way to look at this is we want to steal from every type of healer anything that can help us. So, let's talk about treatment now. If we steal from any healer that helps us, there are some things that may be useful that are herbs, that may be synthetic medications, and some other options. But let's say we're going to treat you. We have no idea which of those are going to treat you well. So, or if you're thinking about your own treatment, is try different things one at a time. If you get one thing out of this talk today, I want you to understand this. If you try more than one thing a day, or even better, one thing for 2 or 3 days, you are doing chaotic treatment and you have no idea which of the things you took either bothered you or than one. Now, along with this is if you change the dose up or down, you've just created a new treatment. So what we typically recommend is you start whatever capsule or tablet or whatever treatment it is, low. And then go a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more. And then, what does that mean? Seriously, think right now in your mind. I'm trying this herb, or this babesia med, or this lime med, and I feel better. I feel better right away. Why? You feel better because you're stunning the organism. You're not killing it. You are stunning the organism. The organism is coming at you, and you stop it. You are not killing it. You are stopping it. If you feel better a months later, okay, that's different. Sometimes people take too much of a medication or some kind of treatment. They feel incredibly terrible for days or weeks or months, and they feel better. Well, that's different. I think that probably means that you did lower some of the organisms to a lower level in the body, and they're not as active. All of these things cause chemical changes in the body, and not merely moving and reproducing and making more, but they stop making all these chemicals. And so that may be why you feel better immediately when you take a treatment. We would suggest that may be a good dose if you have to work or go to some gathering where you have to be perfect. Like me right now, I look perfectly, and I say it's perfect. So if you have to be at a gathering like this and speak at it, then, and you want to be perfect, that dose that you feel a little discomfort. If you feel a little discomfort, let's say your elbow aches a little bit, but really it's nothing that bothers you. You have a bad headache, you have trouble seeing, you have blurred vision, your stomach bothers you, and your knees hurt terribly. Well, if you take care of children or go to work, you feel terrible, but is above those that made you feel good. Because you have multiple issues going on. You may have hormones that are too low. You may have vitamin D that's way too low, and inflammation in your body. By the way, one of the things that we found that is very good at lowering inflammation on magnesium inside cells, and what we found was that they were very low in all the North Americans we tested. Who cares? Dr. J, I didn't go to chemistry school. Why should I care? Well, the reason why it matters is that magnesium can reverse autoimmunity, can reverse allergy. They feel sick. Sorry, I'm just the best way to say this. So the key point about magnesium is we believe that it can lower this inflammation and make all your organs better and be healthier. Now, magnesium orally typically is only good for preventing constipation. So you don't go to the bathroom for 3 days. In my case, I haven't gone to the bathroom in a month, 30 days. But maybe you didn't want to know that, but Simon said to share it with you. You're going to the bathroom more normal. But the absorption of oral magnesium taken through the mouth is usually very poor. In rare people, it's worth a try, but the idea it's going to help you is unlikely. There are other ways to get magnesium, and that would be one is IV, 2, 3, 4 grams a day, and the doctor can make sure that your blood pressure isn't going down and you don't feel weird taking it. Some people are so inflamed in their body that even a great thing like magnesium or natural progesterone, which prevents breast cancer and uterine cancer, in my opinion, and my father's, who was a baby and women's doctor who delivered babies, in his opinion, as a top researcher giving women health for 30 years. And then also omega-3 fatty acids. If you feel uncomfortable with those 3 things, or any of those things, it's a sign that some of your chemical pathways have been hijacked and they're going the wrong way, or there's other possibilities. But all that matters for you is, for perhaps a year, you may need to avoid something that's good so you don't react to it. So, one of the things that helps people tolerate medications of any kind, any treatment of any kind, is fixing the magnesium, and that can also be through the skin, transdermally, where a cream can carry that, or under the tongue, where it goes right into the blood, like some of the medicines that are used to protect the heart. And so that can help over time make you feel better in many situations and allow you to have more aggressive treatment. The other thing is correcting vitamin D. If you never feel anything on vitamin D, if you never feel anything from any of your treatments, even when they're very high in dose and multiple things are tried, you may want to make sure your vitamin D supplement isn't too high and let it float down a little bit towards the middle. You don't ever want it in the if it's in a normal range between this number and that number, don't touch it. My feeling is it's like love. Wouldn't we like to have people around us that have more love? Well, I think vitamin D is like love. And I think you want to have as much as you can, as long as it's not crazy off the scale, to prevent cancer, and you may find that you can handle medications better. It certainly, in my opinion, decreases risk of cancer and makes for strong bones, like these very beautiful strong bones you see right in front of you. You see how beautiful those bones are? Okay. That's how they call me in America, Dr. Lovely Bones. Excuse me, I need a little more vodka. I'm sorry, water. By the way, this web seminar is being brought to you by Fiji. And because we just did that, each of you in the audience is going to get a huge gift certificate from Fiji. And those of you listening just need to go to Fiji's website and just write in Fiji Schaller Conference, and they'll send you a check. Okay. One of the issues I think that can happen when you are dealing with an emerging problem is, what do you do when you have medical problems? When I was in medical school, I never heard the word Lyme. If you came up to me in medical school and you said to me, tell me about Lyme disease, I would say, stop speaking Polish. I don't speak Polish. I was also told that stomach acid was not required and was the cause of ulcers in the stomach. Well, that makes no sense, and I knew it made no sense then. One reason dogs can eat bad food is because they have incredibly strong acid in their stomach, and it kills everything. And we've also learned since then that ulcers can be caused by an infection such as H. pylori. But remember, with H. pylori, that doctor was mocked for years, and he had to infect himself and prove that it caused H. pylori. He won a Nobel Prize. You're in a situation where there are a minority of doctors that understand that your ulcer is from an infection. They understand that you need specialized, tailored treatment. And they understand that your treatment can't be known by a complete stranger in some other country or state. I'm sorry, I had a moment of shyness. It's the only moment of shyness I've had in 20 years. You can put that in your diary tonight. The larger point is, I think there is room for a lot of hope with these infections. We only take very hard patients. I'm a full-time researcher. So everybody that comes to me has been to typically 30 to 200 or more healers of very different types. They may have gone to Norway, and then Sweden, and then Germany, and then France, and then Poland, and then America, and then they've been everywhere. We have some people coming in with huge crates of records, thousands of pages of medical records. So I treat typically very tough people, and they all get better. They all get better. Now, do they get better in a week? No. It should be that if you're not getting better, let's say you write down your 10 top problems, the 10 things that are bothering you. 5 of those may be directly from the infections we're talking about. Babesia, Bartonella, Lyme, and what they do to the body, because they change things in the body. They change vitamins, they change minerals, they change hormones, they turn off chemicals that calm inflammation. They raise inflammation and raise it up. So it feels like you have gasoline in your body. So you have 10 problems, 5 may be directly due to the infections, and 5 may be due to things they cause. So my hand being hit is directly due to the infection. and the air that's moved behind my hand as it goes back is due to the presence of the infection. All right, let's say you can't sleep. That could be any of those infections, and the most common one is Bartonella. Anything that causes die-off, anything that kills any of these infections can make your symptoms worse, can change your mood, can become more anxious, more depressed, more irritable, and have insomnia. Okay, so the insomnia can be directly due to Bartonella, but it may also cause you to feel depressed. And that's the area of Band-Aids. Some would call them crutches. Let me give you an example. You may be more depressed because of Bartonella, and you can say, well, I'm just going to wait till all my Bartonella is gone. Well, that's fine. What about all the people who have to live with you? And let's say you're a real cranky person like me, nobody's going to want to live with you. So my suggestion would be, there's a treatment for the Bartonella, but you also want to treat the thing that is limiting your ability to relate, your ability to sleep, your ability to feel calm, your ability to work. I have a lawyer that I have treated in the past, and I'm allowed to share this because President Putin has given me permission. And every 6 months, the lawyer who has a huge business, is an amazing lawyer, starts feeling tired. What does he do? He takes some Mepron for 2 weeks, it goes away, his tiredness, and he is fine for 6 months. What happened? Over 6 months, the number of Bartonella increased a little bit, just a little bit. And it became probably more chemically active. And then he reached just to the level that he had symptoms. And then the direct treatment fixed his tiredness. That is not the way it usually goes. The way it usually goes is you need to Lyme, Babasian, Bartonella, and also use some Band-Aids or crutches or other tools or treatments to make sure your mood is reasonable, you're not irritable, you're not sad, you're not anxious, you're not panicky, you're not nervous all the time. And also, this is extremely important, you must sleep. Now, some people believe it's healthy for you to sleep 16 hours a day. And I've actually had somebody in Europe who mocks me because I don't think you need to sleep 16 hours a day. Others who are real go-getters say, Dr. Schaller, I only sleep 5 hours a day. I've only slept 5 hours a day my whole life. I should just sleep 5 hours a day. The research shows that as a trend, people need generally 8 hours or a little bit more. So the best amount of sleep for a 17-year-old is always going to be 8.25 hours. 8 hours and 15 minutes for a 17-year-old. Well, I act like a 17-year-old when I'm the most mature, and I still need 8.25 hours. And I would add in one or two more hours. For healing, why does this matter? If you are only sleeping 5 hours a night, you are increasing inflammation 1,000% for 10 days. There are many inflammation chemicals, and that's a little bit of a simplification, but let me ask you, in that room right now, would you rather have a match? Would you rather have that front wall entirely on fire, making a lot of smoke, so you can't breathe? It's obvious. You need to calm inflammation, and therefore my appeal would be do not tolerate insomnia. Now, while we're on this topic, one of the questions was, well, what do we do about insomnia? The same principle applies. There are many options. If you have Bartonella, melatonin helps you sleep. That's amazing. I would probably take melatonin anyway, just to prevent cancer, but it generally doesn't work. Some people that like herbs think valerian or kava or chamomile or other herbs will help sleep. And anxiety, I would say they generally don't. But there's nothing wrong with you trying that for sleep. Some try a product called Cabanase. And I'm going to spell that to you. I'm in my tech here. Okay, see what a man of the 21st century I am? I know how to type. All the 12-year-olds texting are very impressed. Cabanase takes the anti-anxiety chemical in the brain that keeps us from being all restless all the time, twists it a little bit, and makes it stronger. That may work for you. And there are a wide range of other things that are used for sleep that hit your own GABA or anxiety receptor and allow your anxiety to go down or prevent you from staying awake. They help you sleep. Some feel it's immoral to take those things, like they're a bad person. You may have the choice between taking something that helps you sleep and decreasing the fire in your body or staying sick. My suggestion is anything that helps even 5% or 10%, I would do. So we need sleep. Some people even need medications that are used for mania or for people that hallucinate or have psychosis. And then as they get better, they're slowly but surely removed from that medication. So if you are not an anxious child or an anxious teenager or adolescent, and you are not an anxious young adult, your anxiety is probably due to these infections. If you haven't had a trauma or you didn't have a great stressor in your life, like somebody you love recently dying. So if you feel depression, anxiety, or insomnia more than you should, then I would get those things treated. That will also allow you to use higher doses of treatment. One of the problems is you don't want things like that to become worse. You want to be able to concentrate. So let me come back to this larger picture. What's my chance of getting better? Well, I think your chances of getting better in 2015 is very good, but you may need to try some things here and there. And if you try things, you or your doctor or other healer How many things are you going to try at a time? Everybody said? Okay, gang, it's a little slow. Let's try it again. I'm going to try how many things per day that are new? Is it 1, 5, or 10 new things each day? Okay, it's 1. Now, if you double the herb or you double the medication, I assume that's the same treatment, right? No, as you recall, and this is the second most important thing I want you to remember, you change the dose, you change the drug. Another way this matters is people say, Dr. J, or Dr. Lovely, as I'm known here in America, or Dr. Beautiful, some say. I've tried everything. I've tried 30 different things, and everything bothers me. I asked them one question. When the healer or the doctor or you took that treatment, was the tablet, the capsule, or the liquid at a full dose? Was the capsule fully intact? Was it half the size or a quarter of the size? Did you take part of the capsule, pulling it apart and taking 1/8 of the capsule? Did you take the tablet and did you crush it and start with 1/8 or 1/4? Never do they do that. So another point I would like to suggest is the reason why some people are very reactive to whatever treatment is they need to start with a very, very low dose. That may mean something crazy. It may mean that something that helps depression at 20 milligrams or helps kill Lyme at 300 milligrams may need the 20 milligram may need to be started at 1 milligram. Now that's most people, but it might be 1 in 10 or 20. And if you're starting with 20 milligrams, or what the company says, or the expert doctor says, or the drug company says, or the alternative medicine healer says, you may feel terrible. Find out a quarter of a capsule or tablet still bothers me. I don't feel good. Okay? What is that telling us? That's telling us that you may need to have that medication taken to the pharmacy and made into 1 milligram to try it. Does everybody understand that point? The first one is sort of what we've been talking about. What is my chance of cure? And I think what I have found in my practice is we can kill Lyme, we can destroy biofilm, we can kill Lyme cysts, we can kill Babesia, we can kill Bartonella, and we can fix the things they do. Right now, the only thing we can fix is if you lose all the cartilage in your now bone on bone, or if you have a stroke and a large portion of your brain has lost some function, we may not be able to get that right away. But let me tell you something new. I had somebody with Lyme. They have no cartilage in their knee, and they were injected with amniotic tissue for very healthy women, and they deliver a baby that's very healthy. And during the delivery, these are people that have to have the baby come out through the belly, and the tissue is taken that's in that area, and that is filled with stem cells. And things that make those stem cells, that can be anything, become other organs. So, for example, even in the last month, we have seen this amniotic tissue completely remove the pain in the joint and start rebuilding the tissue in the joint so that people are running when just walking made them cry. So I think your overall feeling should be that you're going to be successful. But success means continue to learn, and you continue to try to go to people who are doing things that were done 20 years ago. That's all they do. I'm not insulting those people. I'm just saying, in the same way, it's probably good that Poland is now free. We need to accept that there's a lot of new information in a new generation of Lyme doctors, and if we're open to learning, I would be confident. My hope is this talk is the beginning of that. There will be some things that we won't get to, and I'd like to mention again my website. There is a second book on there that will cover some of the questions that were asked. For example, one question was, what can I do to keep ticks or fleas off myself, off my clothing, off my skin, off my children, not in my backyard? In the book, What You May Not Know About Tick and Flea-Borne Infections, which has a family on the front in grass and woods, and it has a blue cover. What You May Not Know, and a blue cover. I only have one book like that, and it has a on the front. In there'll be a lot of information, and it includes how to keep these things off you if you don't want any relatives or yourself to be bitten again. And that would be page 97 to 107. Page 97 to 107 in that book. All right. I think another way to be diagnosed is by looking at indirect labs. For example, one thing we know is the stomach of a tick does not have one thing, as I said before. I went into Dr. Mido's refrigerator early this morning when he was sound asleep, and it's amazing all the different types of foods he had. And that's the same thing with a tick stomach. There's not one thing in the tick stomach. And there wasn't one thing in the good doctors, including matzo balls. Apparently he loves matzo balls. I saw 20 jars. Go figure. In any event, the tick stomach has a lot of things in them. So one way to help with diagnosis and to be a little more confident that you have tick infections is to look at a wide range of viruses that the tick carries in their stomach. And there are huge numbers of these: parvo, chlamydia pneumonia, mycoplasma pneumonia, Coxsackie. And what you can find is on the checklist book, you can find in there a section of labs. And thanks to Beata, in roughly 2 weeks, the Bartonella checklist, which will include some of these labs I'm talking about, virus labs, it'll be in Polish for your reading pleasure. The other thing that people can be very concerned with is there are labs that show that your cancer-fighting cells may not be very good. You may have heard of the CD57. Well, it is true that this type of marker on an infection cell can help you determine the presence of Lyme and some other things. Let me just help you understand first what these crazy numbers mean. Right now, I'm obviously wearing a very fashionable, chic, hip, Polish young shirt. Like immune cells, I am wearing things. I see a wonderful young man with a cap. I see a very lovely leather coat. I see the doctor wearing a light-colored, lovely sport coat that is mandatory in America for speakers. And the same thing is true of immune cells. They wear different things on the surface, and we give them numbers. We could call it cancer killer cell marker 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but that would be too easy. So we call it CD57 or CD4 or CD8 or CD56 to make you feel confused and inferior. You're not confused, or it's not clear. So let's go back to things like cancer-fighting cells. What we have seen is that if you check something like a CD57 and it's low, that tells you a few things. And the vitamin D is low, let's say. Most of you, by the time you have symptoms, have had these infections for many years. Please understand something. They reproduce very slowly. These are not like the infections where you have a strep throat or you make some food and the sun is hitting it for hours and people may throw up and get sick because of very rapidly reproducing organisms. Lyme, Babesia, Bartonella reproduce very slowly. So, one use of that test, the CD57 and vitamin D and other tests, is to get a sense of how long you've had this. Typically, you've had this for years before you felt symptoms. There's a common misunderstanding, and that's this: that I get bit or I took a steroid like prednisone, or I had a car accident, or I got married, or I had a baby, or I fell down some stairs, and that's the reason I'm sick. No, usually that's the trigger to make you aware you're sick, and you would have gotten sick, become clear, 6 months, a year, year and a half later anyway. It may be that the car accident or the divorce or having the baby or having an injury or having the flu or getting a new bite made you present with symptoms. But those are a trigger. Talk about the tick bite thing for a moment. If you inject spirochetes into an animal and you inject it in, there's no rash in the mammal, the animal. When you inject it again, then you see a rash. So some people, when they get bit, they feel like, oh no, that was when it started. That was, in my opinion, triggering a previous bite or many bites. Most people get it in their backyard in the United States. Basically, if the only people that are not at risk are pure city dwellers that never go into the country and have no pets. So we're talking about a lot of Europe is at risk, and that doesn't mean you need to live in your room and being afraid of trees and grass. So there are some things that can be put on the clothing and the skin. They're natural and they're very powerful. There is an extract that is taken from a flower that can be put on your clothing, and the tick will be dead in seconds if it touches your clothing. And that's permethrin, and you can get that spelling in the book I mentioned earlier on page 97 to 107 in that book that I just mentioned, and I put the pages up. I think the other thing that can lower C57 is Babesia die-off. We have seen people drop 100 points in days from an effective Babesia treatment. There are people that have other cancer-fighting cells that have the clothing of 4 or 8, and we call them CD4 or CD8, and they may be in a reasonable number, maybe so ill that every cancer killer marker is low, and those people ought to be on things like selenium 200 milligrams a day. It would be good to have very good probiotics. A good probiotic will prevent cancer, and it will digest toxins such as mold toxins and other bad chemicals we all have in the modern age. You all have over 100 hormones that are artificial in your body while you're sitting here talking to me. In America, every child is born with at least one pesticide in their blood. So having good probiotics is very good, but you want to make sure which probiotic. It needs to be proven that it binds to the intestinal wall of humans, not of horses, of humans. It needs to reproduce like crazy, like rabbits. What good is a probiotic if all it does, like my wedding ring, is just protect 1% of your 30-foot intestine? That's useless. So it has to proliferate like crazy. The other thing it has to do is it has to work together with other good bacteria, just like my fingers here are playing the piano perfectly. Right now, I'm playing Beethoven's Fifth, and that is a bad Irish joke. So what you want to look for in a good probiotic is, does it have research that shows it prevents bad C. difficile, which we sometimes call C. diff infections? And does it show that it prevents damage and it shows it helps the intestines? That a good probiotic is an anti-cancer treatment. Things that may also be useful, like tocotrienol, and that is T-O-C-O-Tri-E-N-O-L-S. If you take regular vitamin E that has a pH in there, that may thin the blood and prevent strokes and heart attacks and clots from the legs from babesia or caused by inflammation. But tocotrienols that I just put on I just typed in on the side area there, that has research showing it reduces some cancer and lowers inflammation. It will not replace magnesium, but it will be helpful. I'm going to take 10 seconds and fix my background, and I'll be with you. Why don't we take a 2-minute break, and I'll be back in 2 minutes. There are some other ways to decrease cancer risk, but I think for now, we're just going to stick with those. I would add that if a man has these infections, or a woman, and they're an adult, they should have testing for free testosterone and DHT. Free testosterone and DHT levels in the blood, and we just attempted to type those in. That makes blood vessels dilate in the heart and in the brain, and also grows bone. It may prevent prostate cancer, and women should have plenty of progesterone. So if you have PMS symptoms, you do not have enough progesterone if it's right before you bleed. All right. That's all I'm going to say on cancer now. Just give me 1 second. I'm going to turn off my fan. My goal is to keep you entertained and do a little comedy so you can see how klutzy Americans are at times. As doctors, we make mistakes, and when we don't listen to patients who are telling us they are sick, that's the biggest mistake we can make. Okay, we'll put that for the rest of our talk. Thank you for your patience. For those who left, we made some further serious comments about cancer. We're going to move on. Goal of treatment should be full recovery of function. Anything below that, I think, is not 2015 medicine. The days where you're supposed to be sick for 10 years, I think are ridiculous. Many of the reasons people were sick for 10 years was because nobody knew to look for Lyme, Babesia, and Bartonella and the things they messed up. But also, there were many things the doctors didn't know. They didn't know to look really hard for Babesia. They should always assume it's present. look very hard for Bartonella. I always assume it's present. That is a 2015 useful bit of information is we now know, I believe, certainly, that Lyme has a biofilm. That's a big deal. Years ago, I had a pool, and it got a film on it. There was algae there that was green algae, and I couldn't kill it no matter what I put in there. And I'm not going to tell you what I put in there, because I'm not proud of it. But when I finally brushed it, the film lifted off the algae and floated away, and then my treatment could come down and it killed the algae in 2 minutes. 2 minutes, the algae was gone. The same thing with biofilm and Lyme. The bottom line on biofilms and Lyme is, I believe, many of the best ways to kill that, or things that, any event, in terms of the biofilm issue, that is another thing that we've come to realize that can get you better treatment. In terms of Babesia, I medications like Alenia, A-L-I-N-I-A, Co-Ortem, and artesunate. And artesunate is probably one of the #1 medications in the world, because the #1 treatment for malaria that comes from sweet wormwood. So we can be more optimistic about success because we have many more tools to kill these things, and that, but you may have to go very high to get an effect. But what if you feel nothing on Mepra ever? Well, you have things like Alenia, or Coartem, artesunate, and there are many, many other options. One of the questions that's raised a lot is, how do I improve my immune system? I think this is an area that can be very smart and very dangerous. If you feel that you are going to overcome the incredibly complex and powerful Lyme and Bartonella, which suppress the immune system, and Lyme has 28 ways to avoid the immune system. And Bartonella, as you recall, turns down some immune chemicals. If you think you're going to beat them by stimulating your immune system, it's probably not going to work. Now, that doesn't mean that dietary changes cannot be helpful. You can decrease your inflammation quite a bit by stopping alcohol. So now I have moved from vodka to Fiji water, and also getting good sleep. That will help your immune system. But there also can be immune stimulators, and there are many out there. I'm not going to spend time on it now. But here's the way I would think about it. If you want to stimulate the immune system by diet or a supplement, diet is this simple. I would avoid, we already mentioned alcohol, I would avoid things that prevent sleep, and I would avoid grains and fruit juices. If you want to have fruit, have the whole fruit. But I would avoid pastas, breads, flours, and cereals. A lot of times, these grain carbs, and sugar and candy and ice cream carbs can cause very fast spikes in sugar and even higher levels of inflammation. So sometimes you hear talked about a lot is a Lyme diet, and people feel better. Well, it's an anti-inflammatory diet. And it was posted in a book I co-authored in 2005. by Dr. Shoemaker. But I think the most important thing is avoid processed carbs and processed flours and grains and breads, and that will be a good start to lowering that inflammation. And that may stimulate immunity some. If you can afford it, and organic food in some places can be expensive, certainly go organic if you can afford it. And if you want to take things to stimulate your immune system, great. But don't expect it to do too much in like a CD57 level. You may get shocked that it goes down with treatment. Well, it's going down because you're effectively killing quite possibly Babesia or Babesia and Lyme. It'll come back up if it's an effective treatment. The other thing is the issue of heavy metals. There's nothing wrong with using something like chlorella and removing heavy metals, but when they shift, they can make you feel worse. So you may want to remove those very slowly. And here's my concern. It's more important for you to start feeling better, sleeping well, and killing these organisms than for you to make removing heavy metals your #1 goal. You don't get to do everything at the same time, so you have to prioritize. My patients come having tried everything, and a lot of them have come already being fully chelated of heavy metals. Do I support that? I do. But I don't think that's the #1 treatment, and they're still sick. And their cancer fighting cells are still low. I think one trick about Lyme testing is to use things that only kill one organism to help with diagnosis. We have a book that's free called the Babesia 2009 Updates, and I'll give you that title. And in there, we talk about some sample indirect tests. And we show you how to look for these infections indirectly. Let me give you some very concrete examples of indirect tests. Let's say you get some artesunate, Artemisia, and that's Artemisia anni, that's sweet wormwood, not wormwood. They're very, very different. Artemisia anni, and what's even better is artesunate. Artesunate, that I spelled earlier, is a synthetic derivative of sweet wormwood, and it's much more powerful. It only kills malaria and Babesia as far as we can tell. It does lower cancer possibly, and it can kill some viruses, but you won't feel that. Let's say you get some artesunate, and you have a capsule, or you have the tablet, and what's the first thing you do? You open the capsule. You break the tablet. Why? Because you may take it and sleep for 3 hours. You may take it and have a headache. You may take it and start getting very moody. You may take it and be up all night. All right, so that's die-off. If you take artesunate, or coartem, or mepron, or mepron, or coartem, and you feel worse, you probably just diagnosed yourself with Babesia, assuming your problem is not in the belly. If it's only in the belly, maybe your stomach's got a problem or your intestines didn't like it. But if you have a shoulder ache or a headache or you have blurry vision, you just killed something. And the key is this, is using things that are precise. In the same way as I'm putting this into my cheek, it's precisely a cheek drug. We want to use precisely a Lyme drug or herb, or a Babesia drug or herb, or whatever we're using. And if that has an effect, that will change some labs, and it may change how you feel. That is another trick So for example, one herb that I like from my dear friend Ching Zhang, MD, who has given some products to a pro, and I believe these are also in Sweden, and I think they can ship to Poland, but you can learn from that site a bit. And they have some Artemisia or Artemisia 2 there, which is double the strength. And in that is artesunate. And so you might take that a quarter, and the next day a half, the next day a whole one. If you feel nothing, maybe 1.5, maybe 2. But at some point, it might be a half a capsule, or it might be 2 capsules. You may feel something, you may have just diagnosed yourself with babesia. Another one they have is R5081, and that I've entered in, and that will only kill spirochetes. So if you feel something on that, and typically people take a half of one and then maybe one every couple hours, you can take a very large amount. If you feel nothing from it, you can take as many as 7, 8, 9. But if, let's say, you feel something around 7, you're probably killing Lyme as long as the doctor has ruled out syphilis. There are other things R5081 kills, but you probably wouldn't feel them, or they're so dangerous you wouldn't be listening to this talk right now. Simon, I just want to confirm, I'm seeing a circle go around. Can I just confirm that you guys are hearing me? I don't see you on my screen. While that's being addressed, we have half an hour left. What I'd like to do is move to your questions. And while we're doing that, I want to address the issue of FL 1953 from Dr. Stephen Fry's lab, or Protomyxi rheumatica. Okay, now I can see myself on the screen. I didn't realize I was this lovely. Some doctors feel, because there are not a lot of research studies published on FL 1953, that it's no big deal and it doesn't exist. Our Centers for Disease Control, or CDC, has said, yes, it definitely exists. Okay, I can see you guys now. Forgot how beautiful you all were. Can't live in Poland unless you're beautiful. But in any event, our CDC said yes. Thank you guys. Our CDC says it is not malaria, and it is not babesia, and it is a brand new single-celled parasite. There will be about 7 or 8 studies coming out in the coming years, but they're trying to publish them all at once. We believe derivatives of clove. What I'd like to do at this point is move to some of your questions to make sure that those that took the time to come out and help us with this first attempt at trying to serve you can get some special time and be honored in a special way. I do want to thank those who are listening for your time and patience with us. We're trying to share some information. So what I'll do is I'm going to answer one question that's listed, And if you can prepare in your mind or write down or think about your question, and I'm going to need it given to Simon so that I can hear it, because I can't hear the mic up front. And then when I'm given the question and we can all hear it, then I'll answer it. The question I was given while you get yourself ready for your questions is, what's the first step in a child or an adult? This is a great question. Obviously, it came from one of my family members living in Poland. It's a brilliant question. I think one of the first things is I would get as many of the labs as possible that are found in the checklist. And I'm typing in checkbook list labs. I would as many of those as possible. I would also try at a very low dose Babesia and different Lyme killing agents and see which ones seem to have an effect. I also make sure mood, sleep, anxiety, and pain are controlled. If you're having horrible pain in your shoulder that is so bad you can't think, and you're a child, how can you study? How can you go to school? If you're having terrible pain in your shoulder, how can you work or even think or sleep? You can't. So one of the first things is you have to be comfortable. You have to be comfortable. So that's a basic introductory answer to that question. So what I'd like to do at this time is take a question from those that are there if they have any questions. And just a reminder, that'll have to go through the very handsome gentleman behind you, Simon, who's my brother by marriage. I want to assure you, any question you ask, I'm going to make fun of you, and I'm going to embarrass you. All right, there's an eager guy with a wonderful baseball cap. Thank you, my brother. Go ahead. That's a great question. There are some ways to diagnose it by other labs that they may accept. For example, if somebody has Bartonella skin markings, now over 100, when we have determined by skin markings that someone has Bartonella, they've always had Bartonella in the best lab tests. I want to say that again because it's an amazing idea. What I'm telling you is this. We know that Bartonella increases a chemical called VEGF. And that was typed in, and VEGF increases blood vessels and it increases skin-like tissue. V is for blood vessels, E is for the skin-like tissue. Now, that can affect the largest organ that we have, which is our skin. We have skin up here, down our arms, all down our body. So our largest organ is our skin. And on that skin, VEGF can be right below the surface. I guess my secret's out. I'm really a computer android. Let me just, my electrical keyboard here. Okay. 4, 5, 6. Okay. That decreased my Android or computer man sound amplification. I did forget what I was talking about. Let me see here. Okay. So what we have found is that if people have these different skin markings that came from the idea of Dr. Martin Freed in New Jersey in America, who gave me the idea, and he's published about 4 of them. You may have seen pictures of people with sort of striations or lines going across their back. Or you may have seen stretch marks that have color or other markings that have been around for over about 10 years. We have taken his idea and expanded it a lot. So we find that when you know those skin markings, people, or even children that get Bartonella in the womb, and Lyme, Babesia, and Bartonella all go right into the womb, in my opinion, very easily. That's one way to diagnose that costs no money if you're used to that approach. One option might be getting together as a group and perhaps just getting a copy as a group. We send a lot of free books to people. Perhaps if you're well behaved, we might send a copy to Beata or the Good Doctor. But that's one way. Another way is what I mentioned before, is learning what are treatments that only kill Lyme or only kill Babesia. And I gave you some examples earlier. Some other examples would be indirect testing. For example, if you're a 25-year-old man and testosterone is low and it's like a 90-year-old guy, one of the things you should be thinking about is Lyme. If the vitamin D is also very low, you should be thinking about Lyme. If Epstein-Barr virus, which we don't believe doing too much right now, if that's high, or other tests that would be covered by your insurance. Let's say your white blood cells tend to be low, or they're too high. Let's say it runs around the 4s, it's low normal, but you're always tired. I would be thinking about Babesia. One of the key things for saving money is indirect tricks or tests. I hope I spelled that very correctly. I've only gone to the 3rd grade, and those are big words. Okay, I'm being too humble. I've gone to the 6th grade. I hope that's a sufficient starting answer. You should know that there are people now that I'm in contact with, and we are looking at this problem of the people that can't afford treatment and are suffering. Probably the next book I do, besides putting the checklist in Polish and French, would be a book with nuts and bolts and some cheaper ways of diagnosing. But there are many people already thinking about this issue now all around the world. So you'll have more information, I think, with every 3 to 4 months, expect new information. And I will try to put those kinds of things up on my Facebook at James Schaller and James Schaller MD. Next question. That is a fantastic question. That's a phenomenal question. And if you're not satisfied with the completeness of my answer, you can email me and or do a free consult on my site, and I can follow up with you. Obviously, these are very smart questions. Part of it depends on the thinking of the parent or parents in what they're concerned with. Some believe that even though they were treated for Lyme, Babesia, and Bartonella when they were pregnant, and we do that in my practice. If you're pregnant and you come to see me, we almost always find Bartonella and Babesia with the Lyme along with other problems, and we're treating. One medication, if you're not allergic to penicillin, is amoxicillin. Amoxicillin has been around a very long time and has a lot of success rate, a very good success rate in dampening Lyme and killing many of the active forms. And I'm not aware of any real evidence that amoxicillin harms the womb or the baby in the womb. And there are other treatments that are both herbs and medications where we have some information on their safety in pregnant women and in children. I sort of see them as the same issue. A pregnant woman with a baby in the belly, a woman that's breastfeeding, and we do treat infants through breast milk, and we simply calculate what is the dose based on size of the infant, and doctors all over Europe are trained to dose babies that are only 1 pound, 2 pounds in weight. The science of treating small infants is not new in medicine. So, whether it's a baby that is only alive 3 weeks and is being breastfed, or a child that is 2 years old, it's a similar answer. You first decide, how much testing do I want to do, and what do I think the likelihood is of this going to my child through the womb. Everything about babies, and really about adults, is tailored to the belief and philosophy on healing of the parent. So, you can do select testing on children. I think what I would consider is a lab that would take 1 tube of blood and do a lot with it. For example, a lab that can look for antibodies against Lyme and Babesia and other tick infections. And that might be one test to consider. Based on blind testing, this lab that I know you've heard of has exceptional accuracy in their Western blot. And there's different ways to read the Western blot, and I would suggest considering an article called Reading Western Blots Made Easy. My feeling is if there is a band that is present that shows the presence of Lyme, and that band or surface chemical of Lyme that IJEX is testing, and that's about 13 different ones in both the G and the M class. If one of those are only found in Lyme, I would be very suspicious for Lyme. I don't think that, I think that you can get liquid or other types of treatments that can be mixed with things that can be given and fed, that you can give I believe you can give extremely low doses of a wide type of treatments to children if you would like. And there are many tricks that can be done with each child, and feel free to contact me about them. One trick might be if you are wondering about Babesia and you are able to get a VEGF test and the child has a VEGF of 100 and you give a very tiny dose of sweet wormwood or artesunate, and the VEGF goes down, or the child seems uncomfortable, that's suspicious for Babesia. Just remember, infants all over the world are getting malaria, and they are being treated now as we're speaking with great confidence. They are being given large doses of Coartem, that I would not use even on a large adult to kill malaria. So one of the good things about this is the treatment of syphilis and malaria has been going on for a long time in children, even infants, and we can use some of those doses and tricks. Is there any other questions? Currently, I just see myself, which I'm enjoying. While we're waiting, because I can't see if anybody's coming to the microphone, I just want to remind you that if you kill Babesia, that both the CD57 and the VEGF will go down very quickly. And I just typed that and put that on the screen. I think what I'll do while I'm waiting for a sign, if there's another questioner, is continue taking some questions that were submitted last week. I think one thing about treatment is you have to prioritize. We first talked about making you comfortable. We also want to make sure you don't clot. So one of the first things we want to do with treatment is unclotting. That could be done with omega-3 fatty acids. That can be done by the tocotrienol that I mentioned before, and there are other things like nattokinase, which is an amazing enzyme that I just posted, and that can decrease clotting. There will be perhaps 1 in 50 people that are in such danger of clotting that they can have a stroke or a heart attack or in the legs. And they may need medicines to prevent clotting while the Babesia is being lowered. All right, so I think our last question, I believe, would be from the Ambassador of Poland to the United States, the Honorable Beata, Ambassador to the United States. It's good to see you again, Madam Ambassador. Could you stay there? Okay, could you stay there? I'm going to answer that. I want to make sure that you feel there's enough of an answer. I don't know the way that Bartonella decreases immunity in the checklist book and in the Babesia update. There are some labs that are dropped, and I'm putting some on. IL-1, IL-6, and IL-1B. There are some people that have published large numbers of chemicals that go down with Bartonella, but there's no lab test for them. And some of these people writing, they don't know what tests. So I think we don't know the way Bartonella drops them, but we do know, I believe, that it does. One thing that we tend to see is those become better when Bartonella is removed. I think probably the best treatments for Bartonella are also the ones that have eugenol in them. So, for example, I think one of the most powerful treatments is clove drugs or clove-derived medications, and also garlic-derived drugs. Some may not like those, but those are some examples. Just remember, if it's Chinese garlic, such as what you get from HepaPro, it's not regular garlic. It is a semi-synthetic drug, and that was used IV to save the life of Dr. Ching Zhang's only son. Another option would be HH, which is published now in many books or articles on Bartonella. It's very interesting. After we've published some of this material about 8 years ago, it starts showing up in different places as if it was always known, but that's fine. The goal here isn't who's the hero, it's what works. So I think a starting place is anything that's derived from clove, anything that's derived from garlic, and anything, and the HH herb. And the only warning I would give is when you kill Bartonella, you may see a tremendous increase in anxiety, maybe panic, depression, or insomnia. And this is the last key point. HH by itself can be a bit stimulating. When we have had doctors who were very rare people and and they had none of these infections and wanted to work with us. They have on their own told me, I have tried HH and I have done every test you've recommended. I have none of these infections. They had insomnia and some stimulation. So it's a very useful medication, but start all these very low. Is that a reasonable starting answer? The ambassador from Poland is nodding her head. My friends, are there any other questions at this time? I want to make sure everybody there had any question they want, and I also want to respect that we said this would be 2 hours. There will obviously be some editing. Simon said he'll probably remove at least an hour worth of bad jokes and dumb comments. And I send my love and affection and deep thanks, and I have to those in Poland who hear me and I've seen, and please accept my great affection and hope that 2015 will be different in your healing and you'll see the progress that you're wanting. Big hugs from America.